Hello, everybody. Welcome to my first ever show. I have the pleasure today of speaking to a real superstar. Quite fortunate to actually have this superstar as my first ever guest. So this man played 44 test matches for Australia and he took 208 wickets. He's also a New South Wales legend and he got 774 wickets in first-class cricket. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to Stuart MacGill. Hello, Stuart. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure. Listen, very, very importantly, for everybody that does eventually watch this, they need to know. So you're the cricket judge. That's the bit. Yeah. That's the bit that we all need to know about. And you know what they call him, the judge? Because he makes the final decision. And that's all that you need to know.
I appreciate the endorsement, Stuart, but thank you. How is things going in lockdown anyway, Stuart? How's things so far, in Australia in particular?
Oh, we're very, very lucky, actually, in Australia. And lots of love to all my friends and family in the Northern Hemisphere because it's a lot more difficult for everybody up there. And you can see I'm wearing my Wales hat today, so I've got lots of family in Wales, and I know that it is very difficult, particularly for people who are working in hospitality and the entertainment industries, because there's not a lot of opportunities to show your wares. But we're doing okay down here. New South Wales hasn't had a single case for, I think, 2 weeks now, and Victoria's doing a lot better, and we're a long way from everywhere. So we're very, very lucky, and everybody's healthy, touch wood, happy and healthy. So, and I hope it's the same for you guys. So I please, yeah.
Certainly is. It's going well, going steadily as ever. Hopefully we get out of this rubbish in springtime, hopefully.
Honestly. Eventually.
Eventually, yes. Do miss going to a restaurant, having a bottle of wine here, and honestly. But yeah. So obviously, over the next couple of months, it's a really exciting time because we've got the Big Bash starting very soon. They've also got the India and Australia Test Series and the One-Day Games. And before I start with the questions, I firstly wanted to get a bit of a prediction from you. The Test Series between India and Australia, I wanted to know your prediction. So you're going to do a typical Glenn McGrath and go down the 5-0 route or 4-0 route, sorry? Or are you going to do a different prediction?
Yeah, look, it's funny that you brought up McGrath pitch because so he and I are good mates, and the reason he always used to say 5-0, 3-0, or whatever is because his opinion was always that as a professional sportsman or woman, it's inappropriate to say that you'll ever lose a game. So everybody thought that he was just being really arrogant, but that wasn't it at all. It was just that, no, we're going to win 5-0.
Exactly.
Just so that he was planning to win every game. With the India series that's coming up in Australia, and they're definitely. Oh, look, you know what? I was going to say they're definitely one of my favourite teams in Test cricket, but it's that would probably have been quite simplistic because also I think I have a soft spot. You know, maybe controversial, but I have a soft spot for Pakistan. Mm-hmm. And most of the work that I do in international cricket is with England. So I've got a couple of fingers in different pies, so to speak. But with this India series, I think it could be difficult. So India landed in Sydney, I think maybe 3 days ago. So what are we now? 16 November. So they're probably 10th of November, something like that. They arrived in Australia, in Sydney. They've got to go into quarantine for a couple of weeks, which is just what, the way that the world is at the moment. But Virat Kohli is expecting his first child sometime after the first test. So he's only available for one test match because he's going to go and spend time with his family, which, do you know what? I don't really care what anybody else says. I'm really excited for him. I don't even know how he got on the plane to start with, because I would have been just sitting there going, I'm having a baby, I'm having and to spend time with your wife and your as yet unborn child is very, very exciting for him. So congratulations. But of course, that'll make a huge difference to the series, because he's certainly in the top 2 or 3 batsmen on the planet at the moment. And there's also a couple of injuries for India. The one thing that I do know, though, is that playing sport, professional sport, with no crowd does impact on, home ground advantage. So I think Australia will win. I'll give it 2-0, but it's very difficult to say exactly how it will unfold. We've got a couple of quite young, exciting players that are starting up, and that might prove the difference.
So yes, like you were talking about the home advantage, and I know the Australian fans, especially in Ashes cricket, I know, but not too sure about against India. They're quite vocal and they're not very shy to speak their minds, and they're quite candid as well, aren't they? They won't hold back. Quite legendary, actually, and I think that works really to your advantage. So very interesting.
The thing is, though, man, you remember that England probably has the most active touring group, not just because, so we've got the Barmy Army, but they tour with the Lions, they tour with, England rugby, that, they've got a very active social group that travels around the world. I remember playing a test match against England at the MCG, and I think there could have been, not I think, there were definitely 30,000 plus British tourists that had come over. And none of them liked me, unfortunately, which was a shame, because I heard every single one of you, by the way.
Yeah, but there's some exciting cricketers, as you said, that have been picked for Australia. Like, I do apologise if I've pronounced his name wrong, but is it Bukowski? Bukowski?
Yeah, Bukowski.
2 double hundreds, hasn't he? For Sheffield.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
I quite like him, but there's a guy from Western Australia called Green,
Cameron,
who's also in the squad.
Yeah,
and I actually prefer him. So bats in the top 4 and bowls 140 kilometres an hour.
Wow, that's very rare.
Yeah. I think he could. Look, I'm a big fan of making people wait a little bit to get a game, because if you have to fight to get there, then it means more when you finally arrive. However, Cam Green, I reckon he could be very handy, and I'd hate to miss him. Because sometimes if you make people wait for too long, they don't, that injuries, or they just, get jaded. But so I'd really like to see him play. I think he's is very useful. And I'm from Perth originally, so yeah, I got a soft spot for him.
Brilliant. I certainly hope he does well. I'm gonna go back to you, my friend. So,
Very good.
just going back to the start of your career. So, what made you actually want to go into cricket?
So I was look, I think as you probably know, particularly being in the UK, cricket is a sport that might not necessarily be the most attractive game to newcomers, but you tend to grow up in the game. And if you do, then there aren't really too many other options. So my grandfather and my father played for Western Australia. My grandfather was sort of either side of the Second World War. My dad was late 60s, early 70s. And even the rest of the family was involved in cricket, administratively or coaching. And from the time I can remember, so probably 3 or 4 years old is the first time I can really sort of put my finger on it. I used to go and watch my father play club cricket every single weekend. Used to sit in the chart. You just sit there while they were out on the field. I used to play, tennis ball and, with anybody that was anywhere near me. Used to do the scoreboard at grounds for a hot dog and a can of Coke. That was my payment. I was always immersed in the game. And I think once your family has started you on this path, unfortunately, it's a relentless machine and you're stuck forever. So it's a part of my DNA, I guess.
Naturally gifted. So obviously, as naturally,
I didn't say naturally gifted. What I actually meant was my love of the game is a part of my DNA. Don't say the naturally gifted thing, although I am very attractive, obviously. Yeah.
obviously, you were born into cricket basically, and so you had the passion. So at what age? So I'm assuming you probably played some sort of club local cricket. And at what age did you realize that, I'm actually a decent cricketer. I'm actually capable of being a first-class cricketer, or probably international. I don't know how ambitious you were when you were really young. What age did you start thinking you're going to go to that next level?
So it's a little bit different nowadays. I have a couple of kids, 17 and 14 years old, and when they were growing up playing sport, now there's like Kanga cricket, or I think we have Milo. Now we call it the T20 Blast. There's lots of different sorts of programs that are being run now for kids. But when I was a kid, it was a little bit different. We played sort of, and I'll say proper cricket. What I mean, it was a hard ball, not the. And I'm not criticising today, but it's just different now. But I reckon I would have been 6 years old, and we were playing under 11s maybe. But my dad was not only a player, a cricket player, but he was also a coach. So I was very fortunate that he coached our teams. So, and it's funny. So when you're 6 and you're playing under 11s, it's not a happy time for you. But the great thing is that then you're 7, then you're 8, then you're 9, then you're 10, And normally you play with the same bunch of guys or girls until that time. So by the time we got to under 11s, we were really good. um, and one of my dad's best mates is Dennis Lilly. They played together at club level and for Western Australia. But I always wanted to be Dennis. I never wanted to be a spin bowler. I wanted to be a fast bowler. I wanted to be Dennis Lilly. I used to copy his autograph. I knew everything about him. And so until I was about 12 or 13, no, probably 10 or 11, I used to try and bowl pace as well. But because my father was a wrist spin bowler, I always bowled that too. So I'd try and bowl like Dennis, and I couldn't. And then I'd sort of bowl wristies just to sort of stay in the game. And then it soon became apparent that the only thing I was good at was bowling leg spin. So look, it's good to have your heroes. It's just a shame when you can't turn out to be exactly like them.
Tell me about it. The amount of people I've tried to emulate and failed. But yeah, Dennis Lilly is such an influential cricketer. Like you actually answered my next question, but yes, he was so massive in the 70s and 80s, wasn't he, with the whole culture? Because I've heard a lot of Australian cricketers in particular talk about, the style and the aura Dennis Lilly had, like, how he'd kick off the sweat and the moustache.
Yeah, I even copied that. I copied it exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So obviously he's an icon in the game. And I know also he had a big influence in India with his bowling foundation as well, didn't he? So, he's had made a big contribution to the game.
Look, let me tell you, like on a personal note, so you're right. He started the MRF Cricket Academy over there, the fast bowling. He's responsible for the majority of, current era fast bowlers in India. McGrath now has taken that over from him, which is, an equally iconic player. But when I was a boy, and you mentioned that Dennis was big in the 70s and 80s. So the time that I'm talking about is in the 70s, early 70s. So I was 3, 4, 5 years old. And I remember very, very vividly, some of my earliest memories driving to his house when Mum and Dad were going for dinner there. And he always used to play music to me because he loves music. Elton John. It was Neil Diamond as well, which was hilarious. But it was a Neil Diamond song that he used to play to me every single time when I worked in, and I would have been honestly 4 years old. So we're talking around about 75, 74, 75. And I remember driving to his house wondering whether or not he was going to play the song because it was playing when I walked in every single time. And he used to play it, and every single time it was. And then in those days, you used to, because it was before babysitters and stuff like that, you used to be allowed to talk to the adults for 5 minutes or something, and then you were sent upstairs, or you slept on the floor, or you did something like that. But then whenever we left, Dennis would always give me a present, like might be a photo or a pair of gloves or even cricket bat. Like he always did something for me. And maybe even as powerful as my family's involvement in cricket, Dennis Lilly is the reason that I play cricket, and he's the reason that I wanted to be an international cricket player. And I never thought that I could do it because I was quite late in developing in that respect. But I always wanted to be Dennis Lilly because I just thought he was so cool, and he is.
Larger than life character.
Oh yeah.
Oh, he certainly is. So, Stuart, do you remember your first ever first class game? So when you made your debut, do you remember that?
Yeah, look, I do. It is a little bit of. It was funny actually. I was so to give you a little bit of background. I moved from Western Australia, sorry, from Perth to Sydney when I was 25, and at that point, I'd already been in the state squad and in Western Australia in Perth for 5 years. And what that means is that so I was in the first class squad for 5 years in Western Australia. I had been 12th man maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 times, but I only played one match. And the one match that I played was Western Australia against New South Wales in Sydney. And I didn't get any wickets. I bowled 35 overs, maybe none for 100, something like that. Michael Bevan made 202 not out, let's say. And it was funny when I was then deciding years later where I would go, because I thought, look, I've been spending a lot of time on this cricket thing. I've got to really just give it one last thing, one last, go. And which state shall I go to? And I thought, actually, do you know what? If I go to New South Wales, I never have to bowl to Michael Bevan again. So that's why that was one of the reasons I came here. Unfortunately, it was a flawed concept because one of my first club games was against his club team, and he made 200 then as well. But yeah, so yeah, I do remember my first game. I remember being. I'm really pleased that it was at the SCG, my first class game, and I'm very pleased about that because Western Australia is a relatively young first class team, and whilst it meant a lot to me to play for WA because my father and my grandfather had played for WA, arriving at the SCG, you could actually feel the history. You walk into the changing rooms or the long room, and then it's in Australia now. Well, I would go. So the two iconic grounds. So we've got Lords, and we've got the SCG, and then maybe Newlands. But the SCG in Australia is now the only ground in Australia that's got any tangible history attached to it. Even Adelaide now, they've redeveloped to such a degree. And by the way, it's beautiful. I'm not criticising that, but it's not. You're not walking the same boards as Don Bradman did. And that's what I loved. I loved that about SCG, and it did have a big part to do with me eventually moving here.
Do you remember your first ever wicket in first class cricket?
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, my first ever first class wicket may well have been for Somerset. I played against. I think it probably was. Yeah, I think it might have been for Somerset. I played. I played against Pakistan A at Taunton somewhere in the 90s. I can't really remember, but I was playing down in Devon, and I think it may have been before I moved to New South Wales. I'm old, so you've got to forgive me here, but yeah, and so I can't remember who I dismissed, but I remember playing for Somerset, a Somerset team against Pakistan A. But then my first Sheffield Shield wicket was Darren Berry, wicketkeeper from Victoria, and it was a full toss, and it landed on his boot. Landed on his boot as he was trying to play cover drive, and it went straight to cover. So that was my first wicket for New South Wales in any case.
That must have been amazing.
It was,
Yeah.
it was actually. Yeah, I have a couple of friends who played first-class cricket as bowlers and never got a wicket. And I tell a lot of people, one run or one wicket, or even one match, to be honest, nobody can ever erase that from the history books. So the first statistic in any sort of area is, it means that you'll never be forgotten, which is, that's awesome. I am, it still gives me goosebumps.
You know the leap between village local cricket to first class cricket? I can imagine it being significant. How significant is it? Because I until recently I played a lot of village cricket to a decent standard. Obviously, I've never played county cricket, but I'd love to have known how much of a difference there actually is.
So you're right, and so over here we call it club cricket.
Mm-hmm.
I think actually, on a side note, one of the reasons that Australian cricket has been so good for so long is because we have a very well-defined hierarchy and of cricket. So you know that if you start playing, 5th grade, 6th grade shires, there is a definite pathway all the way to the Australian cricket team, and that makes things very, very clear, well-defined, and measurable for anybody who wants to go into professional cricket in Australia. But what I always say to people about the leap, as you asked, is that the further up the grades you go, the less forgiving it is. So, I bowled a lot of bad balls in my time, even all the way up to Test cricket. I bowled, chest high. I got wickets with chest high full tosses in Test cricket. So, I bowled lots of bad balls. But if you bowl a bad ball in 4th grade, or in village cricket, or there's always a chance that the batsman will either get out or miss it. If you bowl a bad ball in Test cricket or first-class cricket, it's a miracle if it doesn't get hit for 4 or 6. And so your margin for error becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. The other thing that is very unusual from a spin bowling point of view is that you occasionally encounter a batsman that understands that if he can't dispatch a ball, he should just deal with it. And that's really, really concerning from a spin bowler's point of view, because we bowl slow and doesn't really matter how much you turn the ball or what you do through the air. if a batsman is prepared to just bat all day, you're in big, big trouble. And yeah, occasionally I came across guys like that too. Rahul Dravid was probably the best internationally in that respect for me. He would happily bat all day and not play a shot, and then he'd wait for me to do something, because if he wasn't playing any shots, then I would try and do something stupid, and then I'd bowl a bad ball, and then he'd hit it for four, and it's like, oh, no, and David Boone, when I played against him in Australia in domestic cricket, he just sat there and did not do a thing and waited for me to get impatient, which I did, and I do. But that's the biggest difference. It's the margin for error, which becomes, and it's just relentless, the attack on you. I mean, when you're playing against somebody like Brian Lara, he would just, from the second he walked out to bat, he would be trying to smother you with his talent. And sometimes it did get suffocating.
So it was in 1997-1998 season where you finally got your call up to Australia. That season in first-class cricket, you took 35 wickets, 35 Sheffield Shield cricket wickets. So do you remember when you first got called up and how it actually happened?
Yeah, I do actually. I was definitely not expecting it. It wasn't sort of, as I mentioned, I'd planned, my goal obviously was to play for Australia, but when it actually happened, it was not expected for me. I read the paper that morning. I was playing club cricket, North Sydney Cricket Club versus Balmain Cricket Club at Drummoyne Oval in Sydney, and I read the paper in the morning, and they were talking about, picking another spinner. I was going through a couple in my head. None of them were me. I just it never crossed my mind, to be honest. I was bowling, and Trent Johnson, who's now coach of Hong Kong, but he was coach of captain coach, I think, of Ireland for a period of time there. But he's in Hong Kong now. He's a great bloke, good mate of mine. He ran up to me when I was just about to start the first ball of one of my overs, and he said, Mac, and I hate people talking to me when I'm bowling. He's like, leave me alone. Yes, I know, I've already thought about it, but leave me alone. But I like TJ. And I went, okay, what does he want to say? And I thought he was going to suggest a field change or something like that, which would have killed me. And but he said, "Oh, so what are you doing next weekend?" And I'm going, "Mate, we're bowling. What do you? Who cares what I'm?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know." He said, "Oh, you're going to Adelaide." And I said, "Why would I go to Adelaide? I'm not going to. What are you talking about?" He said, "Yeah, no, you're going to Adelaide." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Oh, you're playing the next Test match." And even like, I the way he presented, I just, it was it was very special because, like, as I mentioned, my grandfather and my father played and state cricket, first class cricket, and so I knew the history of the game. And when I got picked for Australia, it meant that I'd done something that not very many people had done. And I think at that stage I was the 374th player for Australia, so it was it was pretty cool. And it's important to my family and stuff as well. And you like to make people proud, even if you don't talk to them.
It must have been amazing because I know how significant the baggy green is in particular for any Australian Test cricketer. That must have been such an honour, obviously, to have that presented. Do you remember who presented you with the baggy green?
I do actually. So even though I'd been selected for the test, it was the third test in a series of 3 against South Africa. It was at the Adelaide Oval, and there was only 12 picked because it was a domestic series. I remember talking to my parents who lived in Western Australia. So it was about a 3-hour flight from Perth to Adelaide. And so they were, because I'd been picked, they were going to fly over. And I remember saying to them the night before, I said, look, I don't know how I'm going to get into this team because, it's a bit too good, and I just don't see where my spot is going to be because Warnie was playing as well. And I thought Australia just picked me because the next tour was to India, and I thought they just picked me to get me in the group and get me ready for, going to the subcontinent. But in the morning, we went out for our warm-up. This is a truth, no word of a lie, on the day of the game. So the night before, I'd told my parents I wasn't going to play. On the day of the game, we go out for our warm-ups. So, when you do a lap and, your stretches and all that sort of stuff. And Mark Taylor, who was the captain, pulled everybody into a little huddle. And he said, look, guys, as you all know, Pistol, Paul Rifle, has broken his finger. So, he can't play. And that means that Stuart MacGill is the 374th player to play for Australia. That was the first, and I'm just kind of going, well, I didn't know Pistol had broken his finger. I think I was the only guy who didn't know. I'm just kind of going, he's got a broken finger? And then he said, and so Mark, Tubby gave me my hat, and because you warm up in your baseball caps, and so I took it in my hand, and I'm kind of thinking, I want to look cool. So I put it on the ground with all of our, kit, and then we did our lap, and I was running around the ground, and I just kept staring at it because I was worried that somebody was going to jump over the fence and steal it. So, but it was, you only ever get one first time with anything, and I won't ever forget that. It was, I could probably even tell you, the amount of detail that I can remember about that day. I can barely remember where I lived, but I can remember every single aspect of that day.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. There's some things in life that are so special that I can only imagine you never forget that. Loads of things you forget, that's one of the things you want. Do you remember your first Test wicket? Because I know you got 3 wickets on your debut in the second innings, didn't you, against South Africa? And if you recall. Do you remember your first?
I recall. Look, I'd been bowling quite well for New South Wales, so in that season, so I should have been very confident and everything like that. Mark Taylor, Chuck, we bowled first. I normally in any game I like to bat first because then you can prepare for what's to come, and also I just think batting first is smarter on any surface. But in your first game as a bowler, I wanted to get it out of the way, so I was quite pleased that we were bowling first. he brought me on a bowl quite early. I think because he could sense that I was nervous. And he threw me the ball, and the second the ball landed in my hands, I was standing at the top of my mark thinking, oh my God, what if it doesn't land? Like I actually, and I didn't need to think it, but and the reason I say it is because it hopefully will help kids and, you know, adults even who do get nervous to realize that everybody gets nervous. You know, I'd been cleaning up in Sheffield Shield cricket, but when he threw me the ball, I thought, oh my God, what if it doesn't land? So I was very, very nervous. In my first, I think I might have bowled maybe 6 overs or something in my first spell. And then he took me off and I didn't get a wicket. And then he took me off and then I changed ends. And I was bowling to Jacques Callis. And the Adelaide Oval in those days particularly was very long and narrow. And Jacques Callis was sweeping the living daylights out of me and bashing me a bit, to be honest. And it may have been the first variation. So, you know, so stock ball, stock ball, stock ball, stock ball. But the first time I bowled a variation, maybe in Test cricket, I bowled him a slider or a zutta or a, you know, backspin or whatever you want to call it. All the same thing, just different names. And because he's sweeping me and, you know, yeah, and it was so narrow, the Adelaide Oval, that it didn't really matter where you put the fieldsman. You know, you couldn't really protect it. And so I thought he's going down to sweep all the time. And so I bowled in the slider and he went down to sweep it. And then halfway down the pitch, he went, oops, that's not the same. And tried to stand up and it was LBW. And so Jacques Callis was my first Test wicket, which was, well, it's the greatest all-rounder of all time statistically. So, you know, it's a good one to have on my rap sheet.
Oh yeah, wow, that's that. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Jacques Callis. You average what, 55 with the bat, 100.
Oh man, what? 10,000 Test runs, 300 Test wickets, and I think 300 Test catches. So, and that's not even mentioning the one-day stuff. So,
do you know what? You know, sometimes when people talk about Jacques Callis, right, and people always just talk about, do you know, when people are picking their 1 to 11, and sometimes I feel as though they pick Jacques Callis really low. I think people actually forget how great a batsman he is. You know, I'm talking with those
10,000 Test runs, man.
Yes, and you know, you're talking in the same level as Ricky Ponting, so the same level, world class. But so do you know, around the time you made your debut for South Africa, and Australian cricket was almost at its peak. There's players in first-class cricket who didn't make their debuts for Australia until a lot later, or you know, got the odd game here and there, and because obviously playing with so many superstars in first-class cricket, was it? So I know you said you were nervous when you played for Australia in your first game, which is normal. But once you actually got into it, did you find it as difficult as you thought it would be, considering you know, Sheffield Shield cricket is so competitive? Because I know Imran Khan is always complimenting. I know they've changed. I know Imran Khan right now in Pakistan, he wants to almost emulate first-class cricket in Australia, in Pakistan. And yeah, so yeah, if you could just tell me about how easy that transition was.
So Imran, you know, just a legend, and one of my friends, Wasim Khan, is currently CEO of Pakistan, of the PCB, and the work that the two of them have done to bring Pakistan cricket back to, you know, being able to, on the cusp of, you know, holding an Australia-Pakistan series, you know, at home. It's great. They've done great work. And but look, the reason Imran said what he said was because when you play first-class cricket in Australia, there are a lot of players who don't ever make it to international cricket, who possibly should have or could have or would have if they were in other countries. Stuart Law, for example, played one test match for Australia. You look at his county record. The guy was a freak, absolute freak. You know, Jamie Siddons, Bevan and Lehman, even though they played for Australia, what they did in county cricket, oh my goodness. You know, Brad Hodge, there are some ridiculous batsmen and bowlers who have done amazing things. It's actually probably more the batsmen, to be honest, because bowlers always get injured. So you'll eventually get your opportunity. The reason that maybe playing test cricket wasn't easier, but there were benefits. So when I was playing in the Australian Test team that you mentioned, I had Warne, Gillespie, Fleming, Lee, McGrath, Johnson. I had all of those guys up the other end. Stuart Clark. All of those guys were bowling up the other end when I was bowling. That makes your job a whole lot easier, because it means that maybe I was the batsman's leave pass. So he'd take risks against me because you had all of those guys up the other end. Then the other thing is, in international cricket, if you hit the ball that far off the ground, it's out. Because there are no bad fieldsmen, because they're the best of the best. If the ball's in the air a millimetre off the ground, the guys are going to catch it. We're incredibly lucky to have been given that opportunity. And look, everybody always says to me, "Oh, Stuart, you're so unlucky to have played at the same time as Shane Warne." I don't agree with that, and I never have, because as far as I'm concerned, nobody who didn't play with him can compare themselves. I got the opportunity to play with possibly the greatest era of Australian cricket since the 40s. So maybe, with the 1948 Invincibles, I didn't play then, and that was genuinely a good cricket team. But I played with the next best team, and nobody can ever take that off me, and I was a very lucky man. And so I don't ever feel bad about anything that happened to me, because even if I'm riding off somebody's coattails, I'm happy to ride off Steve Waugh's coattails.
Yeah, during the 90s and the early 2000s, the Australian team, I would say, one of the best sports teams I've ever come across. I follow a lot of sports, and I remember under Steve Waugh's captaincy, as well as Ricky Ponting, you guys were ruthless. And I mean that, I take that as a compliment. There's that never say die attitude. I'll be honest with you, I follow England and India, and I knew soon as people like the one guy who I really, really, pardon my language, to shit myself off, was Glenn McGrath. If Glenn McGrath was playing, I knew it's game over. Like 99.9% India or England are losing the game. But
I think looking at dismissals. So look, the guy. So McGrath is a lovely guy too, which makes things a whole lot better when you're providing with compliments. He's a wonderful guy, but he got 500 Test wickets, north of 500. But when you look at how many times he got certain batsmen out, I think you got Lara out 16 or 17 times. You got Atherton out 16 or 17 times. There's some proper batsmen on his list. Test hat trick. He's like the guy. He was relentless. And I think the reason that he was so good is because all he did was he just walked back to his mark and try and do it again. 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 And Jason Gillespie is much the same. It's like, they never tried to do too much. They just tried to do the same thing over and over and over again. And it's a great lesson for young kids. Doesn't matter if you're not bowling an outswinger. You just keep trying. Do you know the movie Finding Nemo, right? They get the Dory in it. Just keep swimming. It's my mantra at the moment. Just keep swimming. And if you just keep swimming and just keep plugging away and keep trying to bowl your best ball, you never know. You never know.
Yeah, I always found McGrath's discipline amazing.
That's it.
Just to hit that line in length constantly. See, another guy who I found quite similar to McGrath, I don't know if you remember Sean Pollock.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought him and Sean Pollock were quite similar. I know McGrath was a lot taller, but like if you look at their records and the way that they bowled, in my opinion, they're very...
Polly's amazing.
And the economy rates as well. You're talking like under 4 runs and over in ODI cricket in particular. But like you're very fortunate to have played in that era.
Very lucky. Yeah.
I agree.
Very, very. I am. Look, you know what, man? You're right. And I do consider myself to be a very, very lucky man. It's to have been born in my era wasn't a curse. It was a blessing.
I agree very much. I just want to go back to your career. So do you know after the series against South Africa, then you said there was a tour against India, but then you had a successful series against Pakistan. You toured Pakistan, and I know you said that you really admire Pakistani cricket. How was your experience there? Do you remember that series?
Yeah. So it was 1998, towards the end of 1998. Famously on that tour, Mark Taylor equaled Don Bradman's highest ever test score, which is 334 or something like that. I think that was in Peshawar. Mm-hmm. But Australia hadn't won there for 30 years. Mm-hmm. We ended up winning the series, but it was only 1-0. There were a couple of draws. But we won the series. But it was the first test win by Australia in Pakistan for 30 years, maybe even 39, something like that. It was... I really liked Pakistan. And I think maybe the reason is that there is a very, very big cultural divide between Australia and Pakistan. like different. You know, we just live differently. But as a consequence, there's no competition. We don't try and there's a mutual respect that goes on. It's like, well, hey man, you're a weirdo. No, you're a weirdo. Like we, you know, like I can still remember, like, because I love food, as you can see, uh, um, and I can still remember people being very, very surprised at the guys in our team if they were interested in learning anything at all about, you know, a different culture. Because Australians are, we're a long way from everywhere else, and we are a little bit sheltered.
Mm-hmm.
Not, and I'm being polite to Australians here. We're a lot sheltered, and we don't necessarily. We think we know a lot about the rest of the world. We don't really. And I remember when we went to Pakistan, people were very shocked that, because not everybody in the team, but some of the guys, some of my mates, you know, Michael Casper. I remember Casper and I still say that that was our favourite ever tour for Australia, the '98 tour of Pakistan, because we got to do things that we would never do anywhere else in the world. You go on a tour anywhere else, India, Caribbean, UK, Sri Lanka, the experiences that you have in the bubble are quite Western. And that's, I think, why I loved it so much. It was just like we were, although I must say, when I went to India in '98 as well, I didn't play. Because I didn't play, I did get to eat and visit places that the rest of the team didn't as well. So that '98 tour was good, but apart from that, every experience I've had in India has been Western. You know, like you know, because people are trying to be nice to me, and it's with respect. Like, you know, it's but Pakistan is just a different place, and I liked that a lot. I liked it a lot, and I've still got, and the look on people's faces, like, so do you want to be treated like an Aussie, or do you want to be treated like one of us? And it's like, actually, I had a similar experience in Bangladesh as well, which was kind of cool too. I went there. I don't remember when that was, maybe 2005, but that was pretty cool as well, because it's just different. Like, if I walk out of my house now, it's different, like, which is cool, and that's one of the blessings that I hope a lot of professional sportsmen and women realize, the gift that they are being given. You know, I've been to some places that I you know, I just would never have had the opportunity to visit. So, you know, yeah. So yeah, that's the reason I talk so highly about Pakistan, I think, because it was different. It was different.
Yes, they're a very passionate bunch there. I know.
Oh man.
I know they had the PSL final today, I believe.
Yes.
It's unfortunate that they didn't actually have any fans there. Yes, it's very, very, very unfortunate. But yes, they are very, very keen, passionate cricketers.
Okay.
Things get better. But
hey, and if anybody ever wants to see something really fun, you'll watch India play Pakistan.
I know. I know.
That's fun.
Yes, even here, since I'm from, even in London, there's a big Asian a community, and you know, you get a lot of Pakistanis and a lot of Indians. You know, there's always that competition, especially in the World Cup, because obviously not playing at the moment. So in that series, do you know that was your first ever experience playing in that in the subcontinent?
Yes.
And so you obviously, as a spinner, you turned the ball quite considerably. You know, you bowled the ball a lot slower in the air. Would you say compared to someone like an yeah, you bowled it what 48 to 50 miles an hour on average? Would you say?
Yeah. So I think that was about it. But so in terms of kilometers an
Mhm.
hour, so I was 78
Yeah.
to 82 for my stock ball
Hmm.
kilometers an hour,
Hmm.
and then my quicker ones, the sliders or whatever, were probably only 88 to 92, so 10 kilometers an hour quicker. So what's that, 3 miles or something an hour quicker, something like that. I'm not very good with maths,
No,
so I
oh, no, no,
apologise.
no.
But um, I still believe that the only way you get a good batsman out is through the air.
Hmm.
It doesn't really matter how much you turn the ball. It's you've deceived them before it's landed. So and that's why, you know, still to this day, one of the greatest bowlers I ever faced was Neil Kumble. And everybody says, "Oh, you know, didn't turn the ball enough." That's absolute junk. The guy bowled. He's still. I think he's possibly the best spin bowler I ever faced. And he beat you through the air. It was already done. The deal was signed, sealed, and delivered before the ball had landed on the pitch. Um, and when I went to Pakistan, and you know, I had a couple of good games, and then, you know, just a couple of boring games, but they were flat pitches. I think, you know, trying to, you know, big myself up, but uh, you know, and yes, the ball did go sideways quite a bit, but I think the reason I was bowling well was because of, you know, through the air, and you know, and that's something that I tried to do through my career. Um, lots of kids, when they come to me and want to be coached, they want to learn how to turn the ball more. I want to teach them how to get the ball to work more through the air.
Very sage advice. So
Mm.
during that tour, you must have Pakistan are very famous for their bowlers. So that, you know, at the time they had Shoaib Akhtar, Wasim Akram, Waqar
Mm.
Younis, Saqlain Mushtaq,
Yeah,
the
and
Mushtaq
Mushtaq
Ahmed.
Ahmed as well.
So do you remember facing any of these and how you felt? Can you tell me how you felt?
Well, look, yesterday when we were having a chat, um, you said to me that you might like me to come up with you know, a rest of the world team, and in that team, so I did. I did exactly what you told me. Well, when the judge makes a ruling, you've got to follow it. But Akram and Saqlain are in that team. So, and look, I could quite easily have put Mushtaq Ahmed in there as well too, because Mushy taught me quite a lot about how I. So, in terms of my preparation for every single game of cricket I played, Mushtaq taught me quite a lot, and so he could quite easily have gone there, but you know, apart from the fact that Anil Kumble, you know, edged him out, but 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 Akram, if you were to go top 5 bowlers of all time, and you know, and I got to play against a couple of them, I've got Ambrose, Marshall, and Akram. go past those guys. I mean, it's just I think that as I said, I consider myself fortunate to have been born in the era that I was, because I've played against these guys, and oh my goodness, like, and it does actually affect you when you're talking to kids and, just to people about the game, because, you say watch on the TV who's playing in a, game, and you look at them and you go, that's not Ambrose, that's not Akram. Do you call that swing, do you? Come on, man. Like, and then you got Marshall, like 5'10", 5'9", 5'10", swinging both ways, 150 for, he could have bowled 30 overs a day. Like, what? And then you look at a guy today and they've got to bowl, they're only allowed to bowl 30 balls in the nets. 30 balls, that's all they're allowed to bowl. And then they've got to go off because they're, bowler management, player management. Marshall could have bowled for 5 days in a row, 30 overs a day, without even, probably didn't even sweat. Is amazing. And then was polite and considerate and could battle it, ridiculous. And Akram's got a test 200.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's the thing. I said, cricketers in that era of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, I would say a lot more instinctive, played almost on adrenaline rather. Now, because obviously there's all this technology,
yeah,
it gets brought to your attention, doesn't it? So obviously, when you sometimes like anything in life, sometimes when you have to think about something, sometimes it doesn't always go in. It's not always in your favor. Having the knowledge is one thing, but when it comes to acting on it, is different, isn't it? Like sometimes playing or doing something on instinct so much more successful than thinking about it at times. But yeah, it's amazing you say that, because nowadays we've got some really good quality fast bowlers, but like you said, it's not the same as before. I don't know if it's due to the changes of balls. Like, so do you know, like even in one-day cricket, look, you don't see fast bowlers swinging it anymore, whereas before, people found it quite difficult to bowl with a white ball in the early 2000s, in the 90s. I don't know if it's due to the volume of cricket they play now, because obviously you've got all the competitions, the T20 leagues, then you've got, how many test matches they play, one-day cricket and T20 internationals. So it must be obviously difficult being a fast bowler to be able to sustain a good pace and to be fit. It doesn't seem as though we have those magical fast bowlers now. I don't know if you disagree.
Yeah. No. Look. I've got to say, I mentioned the workload thing and the player management thing now. So when the fast bowlers bowl in the nets now, they're allowed to bowl 30 balls, per session, because they don't want them to get, which is 5 overs, but they don't want them to get, run down or tired, or because if you play all forms of the game for your national side, you're playing a lot of cricket a year. But my opinion is this: if you're going to run, the London Marathon next week or next month or next year, the first time you run that distance won't be on that day. And you're not going to be doing 5-kilometer runs every day to prepare yourself for a marathon. If I always look, there's a reasonable chance as a fast bowler, if your team bowls first on, so day one in a test match, there's a reasonable chance you'll bowl 20 overs day one. If your team doesn't knock the other side over, you're going to have to bowl probably between 5 and 12 on day 2. So 2 days in a row. How are you going to be prepared for that if you've only bowled 30 balls per training session? You have to run the distance to prepare for the distance. You have to have bowled, and you know, a lot of the time what I do when I'm coaching sort of developing spin bowlers, not as kids, but as late teens, early 20s, we quite often will bowl 20 overs in a day.
Brilliant.
Because you have to do it. And then we'll train again the next day. And that's the reason. So the reason I'm not playing cricket today is because I could probably bowl 10, 12 reasonably good overs right now, but I'm not going to be able to walk for a week. And that's the thing. And that's why ultimately I stopped playing cricket, because I couldn't do it again and again and again because my body wouldn't sort of, you know, join the party. You have to prepare your body to do these sorts of things. You know, I know that, you know, Lily McGrath trained like you would not believe. Stuart Clark didn't like weight training too much, but he used to run and run and run. And that's why he could run into bowl all day and all the next day and all the next day. And you've got to prepare for this sort of stuff. And yeah, look, that's what I believe anyway. I mean, you know, road running is overrated, but running on the grass, you know, just if you've got to run in all day, fast bowlers, they're running 20 metres, 25 metres. And if you're doing that for 20 overs a day, so that's 20 times 20 times, you know, you got to do the work. Otherwise, you can't do it. 20 times 20 times 6. There you go. There we go. I'm good at maths. I told you.
20 times 20. Yeah. That's a lot of running. A lot of running. So yeah, you do have to be fit.
Yeah.
Of course. Do you remember your first ever Ashes series? Because you had a very successful debut Ashes, didn't you? In Australia.
It was always good for me when it wasn't just when Shane wasn't playing. When I was when I felt responsible for all of the spin bowling wickets, it was always good for me, because it was like, well, if I felt guilty if I didn't do my job. So it was like, okay, cool. So, and in that Ashes series, Shane wasn't playing until the last test. So, and it was the same in Pakistan, the one that we spoke about before. So I always sort of thought, well, look, if I don't do it, then who's going to do it? So I have to, because otherwise I'll be letting down everybody in the team, and then Australian people who are watching, and, you know. So, yeah, it was a big one for me. I think I improved as the series went on, to the point that I think in Sydney, which was my first test match in Sydney, I think I ended up getting 12 wickets in that match, which it was sort of, it wasn't so much the number for me. It was more that I'd continued to improve through the series. And that was the big thing for me. I'd been it was building up to that. We'd already won the Ashes. We won the Ashes in Adelaide, which was 2 test matches earlier. it was just really about a series win for us, I think, Sydney, because I think it was, I don't really remember how it worked out, but we'd already retained the Ashes in Adelaide, 2 test matches earlier. But if we'd lost that test match, I think it would have been a series draw. So it must have been 3-1 in the end, and it could have been 2-2. I don't, it's a long time ago for me, and as I said, I'm old. But I think the reason I was so proud of that was because I'd kept improving and I'd kept moving forward. And Shane played in the last test match as well. And, I got all the wickets, which was cool. Look, it did make me feel good because it was, as I said, my first test match in Sydney.
Yeah, that series you did get 27 wickets.
27.
Yeah, 20. That's really impressive. Do you remember your first Ashes wicket? No.
No.
Fair enough.
No, I don't. You know what it could have been? It could have been, I think I bought a full toss to Alex Stewart. Could have, I don't know, I might be mixing test matches up, but I reckon I bought a full toss to Alex Stewart and he swept it. And he swept a full toss and it went to deep backward square leg and just went straight down his throat. I think that could have been it actually, but like unluckiest man in world cricket.
Yeah, obviously the Australians, I think it was about 20 odd years, wasn't it, that they retained the Ashes from
17.
17 years, wasn't it? Yes. I think it was the 2005 series. But obviously you were part of many successful tours, but was there anything more satisfying, as the Australians would call the English the Poms? So was there anything more satisfying than beating the Poms, or was that not?
Let me say about the Poms thing. Australians do call, people from Britain Poms, but it's just something we grew up with. I know exactly why it is. It's, I know why they, but it's not, we mean no disrespect by it. If I'm going to be disrespectful, you'll know. Look, I think for me, because in terms of eyeballs, India-Australia series are probably, vastly outweigh an Ashes series. But the Ashes series is probably, because the home of cricket, is the UK. I think I'd probably feel like that's the iconic series. And I always wanted to play in it because some of the most famous players of all time, Willis and Botham and Gower, you want to have a piece of England when you're an Australian cricket player.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting how you mentioned India, the series, the Australia-India series, because obviously they've always been reasonably competitive. And it was actually the first time I ever actually saw you bowl as about 12 years old. It was in the 2003. It was in the 2003 series where it was.
What did it end up being? 2-2 or something?
It was last series.
Ah, yes.
Yes. And that was the time when Ricky Ponting was at the top of his game. I remember he was just hundreds galore. Him and Dravid at the time, I think they were the number one.
Dravid, I couldn't get Dravid out.
Yeah.
I couldn't get him out, actually. I bowled to, because Rahul and I were pretty good friends. And I'd bowled to him, in first class matches before, and I knocked him over, and he wasn't hugely problematic for me. Like, I'm not saying he never made runs. It's just I knew I could get him out.
Mm-hmm.
But in that tour in 2003, in fact, I would go so far as saying that he is the only batsman in a test series that I didn't think I could get out. I just couldn't get him out. I didn't know how to get him out. And Lakshman, who also a mate of mine, but a great player and everything, he was probably my proudest wicket of the series. I think he got out 5 times in the series, and I got him out 3 of the 5. And I got him out both innings in Melbourne, and it was one of the best I've ever, maybe, top 2 or 3 games I've ever felt after a game, because I just thought, oh man, that's so cool. I've got him, But then in Adelaide, he and Rahul made, I think they put on something like 300 or something ridiculous. And then in Sydney, Sachin made 270 or something. I think I dropped him 3 times. But it was a great series. And also, I liked a lot of the guys in the team. Like, Sehwag, great guy. I got on pretty well with Saurav as well. Well, no, not pretty well. I like him a lot as well. And I'm pleased that he's heavily involved now too, because I think he's a good person. Man, Akash, who was opening the batsman with Virat Lee, with Sehwag. Akash and I will be friends until the day I drop. He is just, and it's cool that all of these, if you think about that 2003 Indian team, there are some good people who were in that side. And I think that it's got a lot to do with Saurav. And he was not necessarily the Australian fans' favourite, because he was always a thorn in our side. Australians typically don't like people that are good. And I think but if you look at all of the people from that team or that squad who are still involved in the game, there's got to be a reason. And I think he shouldn't be discounted for sure. I think he's, he was very instrumental. And I remember when I toured India in '98 and didn't play, he was one of the guys who, would take me out for dinner, would always, "Hi Stu, how you going? Is everything okay? Can I do anything for you?" So, yeah, good guy. I like him. And, Hey, but don't underestimate Akash Chopra. Oh my God, what a great man he is.
A lot of that team have done well. So he's obviously doing really well as a pundit. You got Dravid obviously coaching the under 19s and India A. The thing is, I've noticed a similar success with Australia as well. Obviously, you've got Justin Langer, who's now the coach of Australia. Then I know Ricky Ponting has been involved with the Australia team over the years. And then obviously you've got people like, well, I know some of these players weren't involved in the 2003 series, but you've got people like Andrew McDonald now, who's coaching in Australia now. Sorry, in Leicester, now he's in Australia. He's Simon Katic in IPL. So it's nice to see that, there's all this ex-players that managed to make that transition into like cricket administration or cricket coaching. It's nice to
Yeah,
see.
yeah. Look, it's a very good point actually, and you know, we've talked several times about the era that I was fortunate enough to play in. But you know what the Indian players are obviously, you know, dominating their space. But you know, Simon Kadich, Ricky Ponting, you know, Warney, you know, Brett Lee's working in the media. Jason Gillespie's another one. You know, Jason Gillespie has won tournaments all over the world. You know, Yorkshire, and you know, he's doing great work. And look, I have to admit, and I've got to declare this up for it. So bowlers in world cricket tend to get along very, very well with bowlers. So if I exhibit a bias, it is to the bowlers. But Dizzy and I, you know, he's a great guy. McGrath, as we said, is in charge of MRF now, the academy that Dennis started. But they're you know, you got Saki and Mushy working in world cricket as well. There are great bowlers from that era who are doing enormous work to share the experiences that they've had. A lot of it is not technical. It is about sharing the experiences. As I said to you before, somebody like Ambrose, for example, saying to you, sometimes I was nervous. Sometimes I didn't feel like I could get Steve, you know. Somebody as good as that explaining something like that to you, it's fantastic. And it's invaluable. And it's probably, you know, it could be the defining moment in somebody's development, you know?
Yeah, of course, 100%. Yeah, it's really nice to see. It's good to see, and this is one of the best things about the game compared to a lot of other sports like soccer and yeah, a lot of
Just by the way, so you mentioned soccer, football. It's Liverpool or nothing. So don't. So just zip it, okay? Oh, really?
I'm a Liverpool fan as well, mate. I'm a Liverpool fan as well, mate. Yes,
Excellent.
yes,
Excellent.
yes.
Very good.
I like you even more.
Oh yeah.
Brilliant. So, just going back to that tour, I mean, sorry, that series against India. So obviously that was Steve Waugh's last series, and an all-time great. Can you give me some of your opinions about Steve Waugh?
So Stephen, he is. If I called him now, he'd answer the phone. If I ever needed anything, he'd help me. We don't have a lot in common, but that makes him even more special to me. So we grew up differently. We've experienced different things. But the man is one of the best in terms of self-education. Like the guy, every moment that he breathes, he learns. And he doesn't care where you come from or what you do or how you do it. He wants to know about it because he's got an inquisitive mind. I think he's my favourite ever captain. Trevor Bayliss, who ended up coaching New South Wales and England, is also a favourite of mine for the same reason. They just want to know what's going on, and they take the time to get to know you. They respect the differences in the team and in the person. Stephen is an amazing guy. Look, I think his win rate was 76% or something like that as
Yes.
a Test captain.
Mm.
You know, can't argue with that, man. I mean, the guy, you know, and that's aside from the runs and wickets. I mean, he was just cool. I like him. I'll always like him. Got a good family. And I think, as I said, he respected the differences in the individual, and that's why his teams were the best.
I remember around the time he hated drawing test matches, didn't he? He was always for the win. He'd
So,
rather lose than draw.
We didn't mess around with the draw.
Yeah, no. And that's the thing, it's that mentality that made you the team you were, you know,
Yep.
that sort of leadership. So, oof, yeah, outstanding, outstanding. Just moving on from that series against India, I just want to fast forward a couple of years to the Ashes in 2005. Now, I know you didn't play, but you were in the squad. And I just wanted to ask you your opinion about why that wasn't successful, why that series wasn't successful for Australia.
Okay. John Buchanan.
Okay.
I could pretty much go John Buchanan, full stop. I believe that you have to prepare. If you want to do well for anything, you've got to prepare ahead of schedule. You can't study on the morning of an exam. The final session that we had in Australia before we went on tour in that 05 Ashes, we did Edward de Bono's thinking hats. And I remember Simon Kadich coming up to me, because there were about, we took 17 on tour, the test tour. I think there were about 10 of us who had played county cricket. Mm-hmm. And quite a lot, you know, Cat and Hodgie and Michael Hussey. Like, there were a lot of guys who had played a lot of county cricket. And Cat came up to me and he said, when are we going to talk about the players? And I said to him, look, I don't think I'm the right person to ask. Why don't you go and talk to Punter about it? Because it was Rick's first, or one of his first tours as captain. And I said, just go and talk to him, because I agree, totally agree. It's ridiculous. In my opinion, not considering all of those England players is disrespectful. And I think that is all John Buchanan. So the one-day series was before the test series, and I was working for a TV station back in Australia, because I wasn't picked for the one-day series, so I was working for a TV station. I'd been watching Jason Gillespie and Matthew Hayden in particular. Those two, I'll call those, both of whom are in my greatest Australian team. You know, their greatness. But I'd seen a couple of things that I just thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why they do that, why they're doing that. And when I arrived in England, I said to John Buchanan, look, I think Matt's doing this, I think Dizzy's doing that. 3 weeks later, when they were still doing it and it was causing them enormous problems, and Dizzy ended up getting dropped for the last test match. That you know, I said to Buchanan, mate, I don't know, did you talk to them about? And he said, oh no, well, that, you know, surely that's not my job. And I said, mate, you're the fucking coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
I promise you. So then, and Buchanan never swore. He was he's a placid, nice man. Nice man. Great family. Nice man. Never swore. On day one at Edgbaston, where, by the way, completely blame him for everything. There were, as I said, there were 10 of us in the squad who'd played there. It turns this far. Warney got 12 wickets for the test, 6 in the first, 6 in the second, something like that. It was ridiculous. When McGrath rolled his ankle and they picked Michael, because that was one of the tests that I wanted to play him, they picked Michael Casper. I'm just going, well, you know, I understand if I'm not in the first team, but if somebody's injured, I'm, you know, because it turns, you know, from one side of the pitch to the other at Edgbaston, particularly depending on the, you know, the tights, you know. I know that sounds weird, but, you know. And Buchanan at the end of day one, we got, I think it was England had made 390 or something on day one. It was a big, big score. But we had he called everybody in. And we were 1-0 up in the series at that time. He called everybody in. We had a team meeting, and he was swearing at us, and he was going, you know. And I remember just sitting there kind of going, hang on a second, this is just all an act. You think that this is just what you have to do to get us to... And I remember just sitting there, and I just started laughing at him. And I remember Warney said, mate, are you finished? I'm tired. I've been bowling all day. Can I leave now? And there's you know, all of the bowlers actually. Our bowling group was really, really good. Mm-hmm. They were all just kind of going, "You look, mate. Yep, cool. Yeah, we had a bad day. Great. Are you finished? You finished? Are you finished? Can we go? We're bored. We're bored of you. Like, move on." And the next morning, I don't remember how many wickets it was that we needed to take. It might have even been 6. It was, but we knocked them over. There was only 40 more runs scored. Mm-hmm. I think England only made 400 in the first innings, having been 360 on day one. And as we know, it came down to the last ball to get, you know, it was one of the great. So for somebody to be so reactive and so nervous, it flies in the face of everything that we've been talking about Steve Waugh and Australian cricket teams. John Buchanan forgot what we were, and I blame him for all of the failures of the individual players in 2005, because all it would have taken was for him to walk up, put a shoulder on the hand of somebody, a hand on the shoulder of somebody, and go, mate, just remember, you know, this is what we do. This is how we do it. You're going to have some bad times. You're going to have some good times. Don't worry about it. Everything's okay, man. It was a bad tour for Australia, and it marked the start of a decline in international cricket, as far as I'm concerned.
Interesting. Speaking about John Buchanan, he had this infamous boot camp in 2006. Now, I was just wondering if you can elaborate on that a little bit, because I know there's a few cricketers who weren't really happy with it, weren't they?
No, I think there were 7 injuries out of the 20 players that went. Mm-hmm. Michael Kasprowicz played 1 first-class game after that, ever.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Andrew Simons was out for 6 months. Michael Clark was out for 6 months. Warney got injured. I got injured. Phil Jakes got injured. There were so many people got injured in that. And the reason that I thought that it was just absolute insanity was because it was held at the beginning of a 10-month straight playing schedule. So it was I don't know why you do that. And you know what? And then the one of the things is because I have plenty of nice things to say about John Buchanan as a human. Like he's a very, very nice man, and as I said, he's got a lovely family. But as a coach, he's a moron. He didn't understand a thing that he did. I remember we're in the West Indies, and he stuck some. He used to stick pamphlets under the door of your room. He's Sun Tzu and stuff like that. He didn't understand any of it. He had no idea that if he understood it himself, he didn't understand how to communicate it. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, I understand.
So, but oh my God, he was a muppet. But anyway, so as Warnie said, a coach is something you jump on to get to a game.
Fair enough. I know you've had some successful coaches since, and yeah. So,
well, as I said, Trevor Bayliss is the greatest coach of all time, as far as I'm concerned. He's one of my favourite captains. He was definitely my favourite coach. And it was mainly because I had nothing in common with him. So I kind of figure if you can work with me, then you can work with anyone.
Fair enough. So after this boot camp, so once around 2007, the Ashes, when it was Warnie and I believe McGrath's last series, and then they retired. So then I believe then I would assume you're probably about 36, 37 years old at the time.
Yeah, I guess maybe 37-ish. I didn't know that Shane was going to retire.
Okay.
If you look, when there's injuries, I think during the period of time that I played first class cricket in Australia, I probably had between 12 and 20 operations. You know, in the last year I played, I had 6. I think that Shane may have just sort of run out of steam. He, as far as I'm concerned, he had 3 career-ending injuries and came back from each of them. And McGrath, he was pretty much the same, to be honest. He had maybe 2 or 3 career-ending injuries, and for both of them, they didn't end their careers. Biomechanically, those 2 blokes were freaks. Everything was going in. So as a bowler, I'm here, you're the stumps, everything's got to go in straight lines. As a spin bowler, it gets a little bit difficult because everything's got to go in straight lines, but then you rotate and then keep going in straight lines. So it gets difficult. But those 2 blokes, biomechanically, they were freaks. But I'm not surprised that they pulled the pin in hindsight. Not surprised they pulled the pin when they did, because they were probably just exhausted. The work that they had to do to win the games that they did, yeah, I'm not surprised, to be honest. Yeah, They were amazing. I did think when Shane retired that I was gonna, take over the universe. But unfortunately for me, exactly the same thing happened. My body, I really, I had to do a lot to get to achieve what I did, and so my body just didn't want to play anymore.
I see.
My brain did.
Yeah.
I as I said to you, 15 minutes ago, I would still, I would play tomorrow. And the reason I don't play much cricket at all, in terms of social cricket or charity, is because if I play and I bowl well, I go, well, fuck it, I'm gonna play. I'm playing Shield cricket tomorrow. Like I'm not. I don't. Because that's still where I'm at. A lot of guys that I played with finished playing because, mentally speaking, they didn't want to play anymore. I finished playing because physically I was unable to play. And so for me, there are some questions, like I'm a bit, I would like to play right now. If I could play for New South Wales today, I would. Yeah. So that's, yeah. It's a bummer. And you know what? I don't know if I'll ever get over it, which is also a shame.
Maybe, who knows? Like, maybe, do you know all that? Those thoughts that you have, maybe you could channel it in a different way. Maybe,
You know why. And so I appreciate what you're saying, but you know why you're wrong. So you know what bowling is. So penalty kick in football.
Yeah.
So it's a set play.
Yeah.
So every single time you bowl a ball, it's a set play.
Yeah.
The batsman can't play a shot until I've let go of it. If I run in and go, not letting go, they don't get to play. Yeah. It's all about me. The thing that is closest for me, and because the other thing about bowling is that you're still allowed to be brutal, right? So I can look you in the eyes and I can go, man, you're nothing.
Yeah.
But it's one of the, because you can't do it in the workplace. No. Like if you did that, if you turned up to the office tomorrow and went, mate, you're nothing, you're in HR and it's all over.
Oh yeah.
Right? In cricket, no, mate. This is brutality at its, I don't know, best or worst. I'm not sure.
Let's go with that.
I don't know. Well, but I don't know. Is it best or is it worst? It might be, because it's bullying, right? It's just 100% bullying. But it is what it is. Well, it's a terrible saying, and I hate it. But it is what it is. It's bullying. But the thing that I can liken it to most is, those old westerns where they walk 20 paces and then they turn around and it's like, it's gunfight at the OK Corral. Like you look somebody dead in the eyes and you go, you're mine. And most of it is mental.
Yeah.
Like they might be yours if you've convinced them that they are before you've let go of the ball. So most of a wicket is done before you've let go of because they're worried, you know. It's not about what you say necessarily, but it's about how you carry yourself. And unfortunately for me, I have unfinished business, and it's going to be unfinished. So if you believe in ghosts and all that sort of stuff, I'm going to be haunting the SCG.
Do you know that what you just said about bowling, and you were talking about Buchanan and Sun Tzu earlier? You've actually just applied the philosophy of Sun Tzu with how you described
yes,
bowling experience. Brilliant.
yes, but you know the hilarious thing is,
Yeah.
I understand it. He didn't.
Yeah, he did. Fair enough. Fair enough. I just wanted to ask you quickly about your experiences. So you played some county cricket for Nottinghamshire, and how was that for you? Did you enjoy your time in county cricket?
I think enjoy would be an understatement. Not is probably it was one of the huge moments in my career. I learned so much about teams. I learned so much about my bowling, about how to taking it through to my coaching now, about how to take it one ball at a time, next ball, next ball, next ball. I think 1 month, I can't remember which year it was, but in 1 month, when T20 first started, we played 16 days in a row in a June, 16 consecutive days in 1 June. So because we were playing T20, 40 over games and county games, we played, it was something ridiculous, like 26 days in the month. It was coming, but that was possibly the most informative and useful months in my entire cricketing career, because I feel as an overseas player, your job is to play. Your job is to continue to contribute. So I didn't always feel like it was about wickets for me. I didn't feel compelled to take wickets every game, but I felt compelled to assist my team, so not to win. And that was what really frustrated me sometimes. Sometimes I didn't do that, and I was a bit bummed about that. But what happened for me is I learnt how to do that.
Yeah.
And I never lost the test series that I played in. So ever.
Yeah.
I never. No, I mean zero. So yeah. Did not lose one test series that I played in. So and part of that is because of knots. And I've got great friends there. One of the best wicket keepers I ever bowled to in my life was Chris Reed. Like, honestly, that guy, he was a freak. He's you know, I love that. I'm still good mates with Franksy. Mick Newell, who's still involved, he was the one who looked after me. I think we learnt together. It was a great period of time for me. And I was lucky that, you know, Jason Gallion was the captain at the time, and he and I had known each other before. I was mates with his dad, still mates with his sister. It was a great environment for me. And like even yesterday or the day before, I bought Jack Russell's. As you know, he's an artist now.
Yeah.
Well, he's not. He's an artist now. He's
He's
so
always
much
been.
more than just.
Yeah.
He's so much more than just an artist, right? But he's amazing. But yesterday or the day before, I bought a picture that he did of Trent Bridge, because
Wow. Okay.
yeah, I did, man. It was. I think it was a couple of days ago I bought it, so hopefully I'll get it in the next couple of days. But Trent Bridge is always going to be. It's cool for me.
Beautiful, bro.
It was a very pivotal point in my life.
A lot of cricketers say that. Even Sachin Tendulkar, so he played for Yorkshire in '92,
Yes.
and I think he had quite a satisfactory record in that season. But what he was saying is he not so much the cricketing experience, but being a man and all the other experiences really developed him. The culture and it's amazing. A lot of people say
what you learn. It's what you learn about because of the, and I'll say repetitive nature, but that doesn't mean boring.
Mm-hmm. No.
It doesn't mean boring, but because of the repetitive nature of cricket in the UK, you have to either because the lesser player would say, oh, sometimes you just have to dip a little bit and you don't try as much. But the real player will try and work out different ways of getting themselves up every day.
Of course.
So you got to do what you've got to do because you have to play every day. And so, because there's no net sessions. Whereas in Australia, there's only, you play 10 first-class games a year. If you play, we get to train. We get to, whereas in the UK, man, you're working your ass off and you've got to get up every single day. And if you're the overseas player and you're getting paid, you got to work because the responsibility is enormous.
Of course.
And you know what? If you don't do the business, you get sacked.
Yeah, of course.
And then, that's what happens.
So just one more question about your county cricket experience.
Yes.
So who was the toughest player to bowl to? Because you had Ram Prakash, you had Graham Hick at the time, Thorpe.
I love Ram.
So many brilliant cricketers. Who was your toughest player to bowl to in county cricket?
Well, that's interesting. Look, I actually, so I'll give you so I played against Surrey at a school ground, and I can't remember what it is, but that was a debacle. It was an absolute debacle. I think Thorpe and Ramps just bashed the living daylights out of me. I can't remember what it was called. I can't remember, but it was a school ground. It was a beautiful ground, by the way, and I have no problem. It was beautiful, but it was small, and so I got belted there. And then there were a couple of Australians that destroyed me as well. But the one that just sticks in my head, and I'm almost grateful that he bashed me, was Cookie.
Oh, wow.
Alistair Cook. So the first year I went over there, I only played, so I went over as a replacement for another bowler for the last maybe 6-7 games of the season. And Knotts was trying to it was one of the first years of the 2 divisions. and Notts was trying to get promoted.
Mm-hmm.
And the other team that was in the zone was Essex.
Mm-hmm.
And the last game of the year was against Essex. And it was one of Cookie's first, I don't know if it was his first game, but he was at school. He was 17 years old. It was ridiculous. And he made, I don't know if he made 70 or 100 or something like that. But for a left-hand, because I always actually used to enjoy bowling to left-handers.
Okay, yeah.
Because I could turn the ball a bit, I kind of felt, so I bowled over the wicket to a left-hander.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd go across him and then turn it back in.
Mm-hmm.
And I always just felt the lines of sight were difficult for him.
Sure.
And so I never really worried about it too much. But he played me differently. And it was a problem. And I remember thinking afterwards, you're 17, what the hell is going on here? Like, you shouldn't be allowed to do that. You shouldn't be able to do that. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
And then, funnily enough, in '05, as we talked about before, the '05 Ashes, and I didn't play any test matches, but I played a 2-day or a 3-day game against Essex before one of the last tests. And I think he made 200 in a day. It was like, and he did exactly the same thing again. And I'm just like, because we still, I should say, Sir Alistair Cook.
Oh, yes.
But we still, because he's a really nice guy.
Mm.
I think he's probably the best. Oh, Michael Vaughan was pretty. Yeah. No, I was going to say, I think Alistair Cook's probably the one that bothered me the most.
Okay.
As a domestically born Englishman,
Sure.
he was probably the one that bothered me the most. And look, fortunately now I don't have nightmares about him, but I used to.
Can you imagine? It must be quite overwhelming, actually. A world-class bowler like yourself and a 17-year-old kid playing, being quite comfortable. Yes.
Man, he wasn't just comfortable. He dominated me, and I just didn't understand. Because I couldn't understand how he could be doing it.
Mm.
And that was the bit that was bothering me. But look, you know what? If you get bashed by somebody who's good, that's okay.
Fair enough.
I'm proud to have been bashed by Alistair Cook.
So just moving on from county cricket, I just wanted to ask you about the spinners at the moment. So right now in the current climate, got a lot of very, very good spinners. Which one would you say is the best and why?
Okay, I'm going to answer that slightly differently. I am very concerned. The hardest thing for a spin bowler to do in 4 and 5 day cricket is to get the batsman to play a shot.
Mm-hmm.
As the format of the game decreases, so 50 overs, 40 overs, 20 overs, that requirement is completely redundant. So in a T20 match, the batsman is trying to hit you for 4 or 6 every single ball.
Sure.
So it's easier. And I listen. I've played both.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, it's easier. You can say, "Oh, you're an old bloke. You're always talking about the old." No, I've played both. It's easier. The shorter the format, the easier it is for a spin bowler. It's more brutal because the outcomes can be horrific.
Of course.
So I'm not saying it's going to be at the end of every match. I'm not saying you're going to be happy, but I'm just saying that your job is easier.
Yes.
Because if you bowl your best ball every single ball, they're the ones who have the obligation to do something.
Yeah.
Whereas in a test match or a first class match, it's my obligation to get you out. It's strike rate, and I've got to knock you over. If you're trying to hit every ball for 4 or 6, then I can just turn up and just sort of let them go. What I'm worried about at the moment, and we're talking Rashid and like there's a lot of good leggies floating around at the moment. There's a lot of good leggies floating around at the moment who are getting very, very concerned about keeping the run rate down. The best way to keep the run rate down is to take wickets.
Yes.
Like, just take wickets. You bowl your best ball as often as you can stack a field. In limited overs cricket, I would bowl sliders, so back spinner, Zuda, slider, whatever, and my best ball, which is a leg break, to right-handers. I would bowl wrong-uns, googlies to left-handers because of the way that, not exclusively, but I wouldn't really bowl too many wrong-uns. I might bowl a wrong-un to a right-hander when they first came in.
Sure.
But I wouldn't be, in short-form cricket, I wouldn't be bowling it throughout their innings because it opens up both sides of the field.
Of course.
And I think the problem now is that lots of these guys are bowling a lot of wrong-uns into leg stump and stacking the leg side so that because they think that they can't be hit, but they're not trying to take wickets.
No.
I think that every single ball you should be bowling in any format of the game should be aimed at taking a wicket. So what I do is I say to kids, think of what your best ball is, work out where the wicket will be taken if it works out exactly how you want it. And there's probably only 4 fieldsmen that are required for that. And then you can put the rest anywhere you want.
Exactly.
So you can have all the, but you've got to try and take the wickets. And that's, so in answering your question, and without getting into specifics and specific players, I am a little bit concerned at the moment. I'm a little bit concerned at the moment about guys bowling flatter and straighter and into the leg stump to bleed 1 or 2 runs a ball. But I don't think that's what our job as spin bowlers are. I wasn't a huge fan of this guy, and he is Australian. So I wasn't a huge fan initially, but if he doesn't play in the first test against India, I'll be very, very, very disappointed. Mitchell Swepson has developed to the point that, because a big part about being a spin bowler, or about being a bowler, or actually about being a cricketer, is about knowing what a bad day is. because it's about how you get up. After a bad day, if you can wake up the next morning and go, right, let's go. And then not dwell on it too much either. Like, okay, I had a bad day yesterday. Right, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm over it. Move on. Mitch Swepson, for me, I'm picking him tomorrow for Australia. Oh, no, I'm picking him with line. So I'm also a fan of picking 5 bowlers. Man, bowlers win test matches. What bowlers provide batsmen with the opportunity to make money.
I agree.
So, you know what I mean? Like, okay, so the batsmen are going to be the ones who are getting all the glory and all that sort of stuff, but they only get there because of the bowlers.
Yeah,
and as far as I'm concerned, in the first test match, we got Lyon and Swepson,
yes,
Stark and Hazelwood,
Cummins,
and well, Cummins is going to be, it should be the next Australian captain. So, you know, the guys are, you know, he's a freak. But I'd pick all of them. And, man, when you consider that because nowadays bowlers can bat as well.
Yes.
So Stark and Cummins are probably both got test hundreds in them.
Yeah, I agree.
And Lyon will probably average 22-ish when he finishes his career.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason why they shouldn't all be in the team. You know.
I agree very much because, Cummins is Cummins and Stark. I think Stark has got a 90 in Test cricket. So
I think Cummins has made 100, hasn't he? Oh no, that was Jono.
Sure,
I don't know, mate. He is an also lovely man. Like, there's some good guys. Yeah, good guys.
So who do you say is the best batsman in the world right now?
Right now?
Yes.
So Virat Kohli is hard to... he's difficult to overlook, really, because also I love his attitude.
Yes.
I just love the way he goes about it. Steve Smith is amazing, but because of his technique, I've got a sneaking suspicion, because as we all get old, I've got a sneaking suspicion that when his eyes go, he's finished. because he doesn't play with the appropriate technique to support. But he is. I'd probably at the moment go Smith, Kohli. Yeah, Smith, Kohli. Look, I have to say I do like Joe Root, but it's difficult to be a cricket player in the UK, because of, and I was going to say because of population, but I guess India is even worse, isn't it? But I think the press in the UK might be a little bit more, and no, but also like they're in your face all the time. The responsibility that he carries, and Cookie have the same thing. Like, there's a lot of weight on his shoulders, but he can bat too. And Kane Rich from New Zealand, he can play as well. I think they're my guys.
Yes.
I think Kane and you know what? They're all decent blokes too. I do. I really do. As you've probably gathered through this conversation, I do place a lot of importance on the person.
Yes.
Um,
Very important.
I, I, I think it contributes to longevity.
Yes.
In terms of form, like, you know, the flash guys, they might be good for a couple of years, but they never make it through.
No.
But all these guys, it's the class is permanent, form is temporary thing.
Yes. Agreed. Yes.
Mm.
It's important to have a good mindsets. I completely agree. So you played against Sachin Tendulkar and Brian Lara. Which one would you say is better and why?
Lara, full stop.
Full stop. Fair enough.
So I'll tell you why. So the harder one to get out was probably Sachin.
Okay.
But the one that you did not want to bowl to, and I would never want to bowl to, was Brian, because every single ball that you bowled to Brian, he was trying to bash the living daylights out of you. Yeah. And both of those guys had the ability to hit you anywhere you want, anywhere they wanted. But Brian would do it, whereas Sachin would check himself and go, I probably shouldn't try and do that because I've got a responsibility to. Whereas Brian would just go, yeah, that's it, we're doing it, I'm going. And he could hit you anywhere he wanted, anytime he wanted, as could Satch, but Brian would do it. And he was, I think he may well be the greatest player of spin bowling of all time. Yeah. And, you know, you speak to a couple of people from, you know, the olden days, like, so, you know, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, all that sort of, you know, rubbish. But, no, not rubbish, that was wrong, but all that sort of stuff.
Of course.
But Brian, I think, is the greatest player of spin bowling of all time. He just hit you anywhere he wanted.
Yes.
He was amazing.
Fair point. I've got a few quick fire questions for you. So
yeah, let's go.
So who's the best fast bowler of all time?
Oh, you muppet. You said quick fire questions. Now I've got to. So look, I'm not going to include Australians.
Okay.
Okay?
Sure.
All right. Ambrose Marshall Akram.
Okay, fine. Who's the smartest cricketer you know?
Ooh. Oh, come on, man. Smartest cricketer I know. Wow. Damn it! That's not fair. Michael Vaughan.
Yeah.
Michael Vaughan. Michael Vaughan. Michael Atherton.
Yeah.
Simon Kadich, Steve Waugh. And when I say smartest, what I like is, because I was fortunate I had a good education when I was a kid.
Yes.
I was very lucky there. I don't look at smart as being educated.
Agreed.
It's about self-education.
Yes.
There's some There's some good brains. There's some good brains in that group.
Oh yes, sounds like it for sure. Who would you say is the least intelligent person? If you'd like to answer.
Do you know what? It's not a very. The reason I'm not going to answer that question. I told you I'd answer. I told you I'd answer any question, but I'm not going to answer that one because it's not a nice thing to say about people. But Hoggy and Simo, you know who you are. And by the way, I love you both.
What is your favorite cuisine?
Well, at the moment, of course, as you know, Your Honour, Maria and I have a Greek restaurant. So at the moment, Greek cuisine is where it's at. Aristotle's Neutral Bay. Be there. No, it's funny. I really like soup. I know that's ridiculous, but I need a little bit of flavour, but I love soup. And we're going to put, consequently, we're going to put a soup on next week. So,
which one are you putting on? Do you know?
No, I can't pronounce it, but Maria, who's Greek, Maria is, yeah, she's found a good one for me. So, yeah, I'm very excited. Yeah.
Are you a beer or a wine man?
Yeah, definitely not beer. Definitely not beer. And the reason for that, I never knew why, but my family owned pubs when I was a baby. And so when I was, I'd crawl around on the floor in the pubs. I didn't know this for years later. But I'd be smelling the beer that was spilt on the floor. And so I never liked beer at all.
Sure.
I only had my first beer finished my first beer when I was 30 years old.
Wow.
So, yeah, I know. Yeah. So, yeah.
Interesting. So you're a wine man, I'm
Oh, yeah, wine. Oh, totally wine.
I hear you're a wine connoisseur.
Well, look, I'm definitely a wine sewer. I'm not sure about connoisseur. I could, wine sewer. I take care of everything.
Yeah.
Anything, there is no waste in my wine department. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough. Brilliant. And last of the quick fire questions is Test, ODIs or T20s. Which ones do you prefer? Which format do you prefer?
So, Test cricket, 100%. And the reason for that is because cricket is all about the face-to-face.
Yes.
Test. It's about a test.
Yes.
The other formats, actually, do you know what? 50 overs, you can. I would actually discard them.
Okay.
I think they're irrelevant now.
Okay.
But I find the shorter formats to be great introductory products for Test cricket.
Yes.
So once you see, Michael Vaughan, Kevin Peterson, Andrew Flintoff, whatever, playing in a T20 game, then you might go and watch a county game. Then you might go and watch a test match, because of those shorter formats. So that's the value for me. I think there's a different sort of bravery involved in those games, but Test cricket is the test.
Yes. Brilliant. And before we conclude, I would like you to go through your 1 to 11 for Australia and the rest of the world, please.
That's terrifying, really. No, you mentioned this to me yesterday, and I've been terrified ever since. So let's go with my imagine, and I'll send you a snapshot of this so you can put them head to head.
Yes.
I actually think the international team might knock off the Australian team, which I'm very disappointed about. But but anyway, I'll start with the Australian team.
Sure.
So I've got Matthew Hayden.
Yes.
Simon, and this is in order. Matthew Hayden, Simon Kadich, Ricky Ponting, Damien Martin, who was the best batsman of his generation, by the way. Very underrated. He was a superstar. Steve Waugh, Ian Healy, best keeper I ever bowled to. Mitchell Johnson, so left arm and test 100. Shane Warne, Brett Lee, great bloke. Jason Gillespie, great bloke. Glenn McGrath, great bloke. Bowlers, great blokes. But that's my team. So Hayden Kadich, Ponting, Martin, Steve Waugh, Healy, Johnson, Warne, Brett Lee, Gillespie, and McGrath. That team, and Justin Langer is very unlucky to not be at the top. Yeah, Simon Kadich for me. So I played with him for New South Wales and in Perth, and I think maybe I've just put him in there because I love him. But also he's a very, very underrated player. And his last couple of years in Australian cricket were just monumental. Yeah, but this is possibly the scariest team. So I've got Sehwag opening. So in order again, Sehwag, Vaughan. Vaughan's my captain.
Okay.
Sehwag, Vaughan opening the batting. Callis, Sachin, Lara, Sangakkara, wicketkeeper batsman. Yeah, oh my God, it's ridiculous. Yeah. Akram, Kumble, Marshall, Sacklane, and Ambrose. So I'm not really sure how you beat that team.
Yeah, that is tough.
Look, I think what we've got to do with that team is actually take them out the night before and try and get them destroyed, because otherwise, I don't know how you beat that team. We got Sangakkara batting,
number 6.
Yes. And then Akram, who's got a Test 200. Yeah. Kumble, who's got 100.
Yes.
Like I think even Saki's got 100.
Yes, he's got 101 for Pakistan in Test cricket. Yes.
A debacle. No, it's actually not. It's not right. And the scariest bowler I ever faced in my life was Ambrose.
Yes.
He the scariest I ever. He's when he ran into bowl, it looked like the ball was a marble. It was
massive.
He was so big, and he was so athletic. When he was running into bowl, he just looked like the Terminator. He was, you know, Terminator 2, where the metallic Terminator was in there. That's what Kirtley looked like, but only 6'10".
Yeah.
So.
He was a great athlete. Obviously, he was also a basketball player, wasn't he? In the West?
God, man, he could have done. Do you know what? I don't know what he did, but he could have done it.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
Talented.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
And that was the most terrifying bowler I've ever faced. Akram and Marshall were probably the best bowlers I've ever faced, but Ambrose was the scariest. I was actually I was terrified of Ambrose. It was amazing.
Not surprised at all. Well, Stuart, I have to say it's been a real pleasure. And as this is the cricketing judge's first podcast, and if I was to make a verdict, I have to say you had truly a world-class career. Honestly, I think, if you played more Test matches, you'd probably have like 600 wickets, in my opinion. you were averaging what, four wickets a game?
I don't know. I'm not very good with maths.
Like, I was looking at your statistics and they are exceptional, truly at every level, honestly. And you're in my, and I'm not just saying this because, you know, you're on the podcast. You are getting into any team in the world, like, and you're competing with Warney for that spot, because obviously playing for Australia, sometimes I guess it can be difficult having two spinners. But I tell you what, you are truly, truly top class. And I started watching you from the early 2000s, and I thought you were brilliant. And I did, I'll be honest, I did, when I used to go to the nets, I wasn't a good leg spinner. I was more of an off spinner, left off spinner. But I did try and emulate your action in the nets. And it's so easy to follow because you get a lot of side spin. But unfortunately, I wasn't a talented leg spinner. But honestly, thank you so much, Stuart. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, Your Honour, it's actually my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me into your court. And I hope that you have many better days ahead. And look after yourself and your family. And while you're in lockdown, make sure you lock a few people down.
I certainly will. Thank you so much, Stuart.